Hi, I'm David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical for Prepared Foods, and welcome to a Prepared Foods look at what's happening in the world of plant-based product development. Our guest today is Tucker Garrison, no relation to Prepared Foods Editor-in-Chief Bob Garrison, and Tucker is the co-founder of Chi Foods, and they're makers of plant-based ground pork and pork chorizo analogs. In this rapidly growing universe of plant-based meats, where alternate proteins are the star ingredients, I tell you, it's not easy to find unique players. Chi Foods, however, is a true pioneer. The primary source of protein for their products comes from the South American sacha inchi nut. It's a star-shaped rainforest nut, and it boasts more than a quarter of its content as protein, and about half its fat component is omega-3 fatty acids. But let's let Mr. Garrison tell you all about it. Hi, Tucker. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning, David. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you here, and especially to talk about Chi Foods, because even as a pioneering company, you guys stand out. So tell me, what made you take the plunge to build a full product line around an ingredient as cutting edge and unusual as the sacha inchi nut?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So, I'll just start off by saying that I've had the incredible privilege in my life to spend a lot of time living off the grid, if you will. I've spent over 3 years of my life with no running water and electricity, and I've spent the majority of that time really living and sitting at the feet of indigenous nations around the world. And when I was living in the Peruvian Amazon for about a year, I was introduced to the sacha inchi nut. And we really pioneered back in 2012, 2013, the sacha inchi nut and protein into the United States as like a snackable nut and a protein powder for smoothies. And for years, we've known we have this incredible hero ingredient, right? Its nutritional profile is astounding. It has 8 times the omega-3s of pink salmon, it has 4 times the protein of macadamia nuts, and it's the only nut in the world that has 0 net carbs. So think about that for a second, right? I mean, you think about these keto nuts like macadamia nuts and pecans, they still have net carbohydrates. Sacha inchi is the only nut in the world that doesn't have net carbs. The other thing that's really cool about it is it's not technically a tree nut, it is a vine nut. So it's top 9 allergen free, which for a lot of people with nut allergies is really important. So let me get to the plant-based meat component of that, but I wanted to give you kind of the
that's great
backstory.
Yeah,
so obviously plant-based meat has exploded, right? It's this huge category. It's all over our culture. In many ways, it's transformed our culture in a few short, 3-4 years. And let me start off by saying that I have really incredible respect for what Beyond and Impossible have done, right? They kind of took the black bean and quinoa burger, which I would say is kind of on the fringe hippie margins of society, and they fully brought plant-based into the mainstream, right? I mean, this is on menus in Burger King and McDonald's and many other places.
They did. I give major credit to Yves Potvin from, before that, he had Gardein, but before that he invented the soy dog and really shifted the whole dialogue from meat replacers to meat analogs. And, that was a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah. And so, it's a really fascinating moment in our culture where there's a legacy of people that have been working for 30, 40, 50 years to bring more plant-based, but all of a sudden it was like this snap moment where it happened.
Exactly.
And I think in many ways it's great. My personal opinion and the view of our company is that in so many ways, these companies are hugely missing the mark, and they've taken a good idea and done bad things with it, right? I mean, these products are mostly loaded with GMOs, many of them touting that as a big positive, which in our view, it's not. We don't believe in a genetically modified future. All of these are basically wheat, pea, soy, heavy monocrops, products that are, top allergens that a lot of people try to avoid. They're hyper processed and have lots of different lab ingredients, methyl cellulose, which is not a particularly savory ingredient, along with food starch modified. I mean, the list goes on in terms of what these products contain. And so we believe that and have proven that there's a huge demographic that has a bunch of mistrust around these products, right? It's like they want to eat more plant-based, but there's no option available for them to be able to eat. And so that's when we launched Chi Foods, and we use the chi nut or the sacha inchi nut as the hero ingredient for those products.
Wow. So, well, what technical challenges, and let's go the first major technical challenge you had to create your products, and then what were the approaches you used to address that challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, imagine that you're standing in your kitchen and you go, and I'm a formulator, right? I've done formulation for years for different products, but this was a particularly steep challenge. You're standing in your kitchen, you go, how do I make texturized protein or how do I make plant-based meat? And that there's no body of research on the particular foods we're working with, right? I mean, there's a ton of research on vital wheat gluten and soy, which is why these other companies are doing this and why there's so little innovation in the space, really. I mean, it's wheat pea soy kind of done over and over again in different formats. So it was a steep learning curve for me, and I feel like I kind of got my ad hoc master's degree in extrusion technology and food processing and texturization, and really trying to understand how we can go from these base raw ingredients where we already had a bunch of intellectual property around the processing of sachi. It's incredibly difficult just to get from the raw nut to the protein and roasted nuts that we have pioneered over the years, but then taking that and creating the texture, taste, and feel of plant-based meat was quite a technical approach, which involved a number of experts from around the world, and me kind of leading the charge on what our goals were.
So, what do you think held you up the most at first, and how did you break through that hurdle? If you're able to tell us.
Absolutely. So we have invented our own texturized protein, and that's really the base of what makes Chi Foods really thrive. So it's called TCP, texturized Chi protein.
I like it.
Yeah. And it is a blend of sacha inchi or Chi protein and fava bean protein. So it's the first regenerative and perennial texturized protein in the world.
Oh, wow.
So that's in contrast to, again, these big industrial monocultures of soy and wheat and pea, which are by far the most dominant proteins in the market. So we developed this protein that is regenerative and perennial, that supports about 1,000 small family farms around the world that grow these ingredients. And again, the body of knowledge around texturization, while it's really growing and there's a lot of research, I don't know how else to describe it, but texturization, I'd say, is 80% science and 20% like it's a little bit mystical. You ask anybody that's really good at it, yeah, and they're like, you pretty much have to try it. You can't say something's gonna work or not work.
Right, gotcha. What other technical challenges did you have with making that progression to on-the-shelf product in the formulations? What other technical challenges can you share in that regard?
Absolutely, and I wish I could share more, but I'll share what I can. Sure. Just to say that texture is such a huge component overall, right? I mean, we invented our own texturized protein, but there are a number of other elements that create mouthfeel in a product, right? It's both the way that the product chews, the way that it crunches, the way that the palate experiences grittiness or not grittiness, the way that you experience kind of like the fiber or the sinew of a meat product. Obviously, fat and mouthfeel is a really important element. So before you even get to flavor, right, you have to work through these elements of texture. And I think what's unique about our product is that we use whole foods as well as the texturized proteins, and I can't get into the technical aspects, but very minimal processing in our texturized proteins by comparison to some of these intensive isolates that are used in soy isolates and pea isolates, for example. But we use the whole chi nut and the texturized protein together. So when you're talking about marrying a bunch of different textures together, it's a pretty technical challenge to figure out how to make that work.
Oh, so you're using both the protein you extract from the chi nut and then whole chi nut as well. Is that
exactly? Oh, and the reason for that is that we're huge believers in whole foods to be able to nourish our bodies, right? And as I mentioned before, the nut itself is incredibly high in omega-3s, right? So you're getting this big dose of omega-3s from the nut itself, along with a protein that has all 9 essential amino acids, complete protein.
Wow.
So
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah, that's and impressive. So, how has navigating these technical and production challenges of your products given you a clearer view of what sets you apart from your competition?
Well, there's just simply nothing like it, right? And what we've done, both in our we run a company, and our parent company is called Imlak'esh Organics. So we
Right.
have the supply chain in 10 years of experience working in exclusive relationship to source such inchi. So we have both that plus the IP around processing the ingredient, but then we're also talking about having created our own texturized protein, invented this product that didn't exist from ingredients that we were told you couldn't use to texturize, and we cracked that code. So I really think that when it comes to competition in other companies, what I see is people taking things off the shelf, taking soy protein isolate, texturized pea protein or a vital wheat gluten, and then just making another chicken nugget or another burger or another, ground meat or beef product. And what sets us apart is that we sought to create something truly unique that was truly regenerative and good for the planet and also super good for people's health, right? I don't believe there's a whole lot of other plant-based meat products out there, or any that hit all of those markers. And for me, the human health component is a massive component of this whole thing. And it's the biggest place where some of these, juggernauts in the space are really missing the mark.
Yeah, and you're starting from scratch on every product, which is also truly impressive. We've touched on the omega-3s. Have you done an analysis to find out how much omega-3 is in each serving of your products?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that number for you today, but I will
That's
follow up
fine.
with you in an email and send it your way.
Yeah, no, it's pure curiosity, but it does, any omega-3 we can get in our diet since the American diet is so deficient in omega-3s. Any amount you get is great, but I was just curious.
It's quite a lot, is to answer your question.
It's what?
It's quite a lot to answer your question. And the nut itself is about 25% of its weight is omega-3s.
Wow. That's
So
amazing. So, what aspects of your formulations are you tweaking for the next versions or, 2.0, whatever you want?
absolutely. I mean, we're always in a state of reflection of how we can improve the texture and flavor of our products, right? So we launched 4 ground pork products, and there's an original, which is like a great for chefs. There's an Italian herb, there's a chorizo, and a maple breakfast.
Oh,
So we're continuing to see if you're talking about tweaks rather than kind of like an innovation pipeline. Obviously, we're
I'll get to
always
that
looking to
later.
improve the texture of the product. And I will say that originally when we were formulating this, there was a little bit of pea protein in the product. And one of our tweaks towards the end of our formulation process was actually the ability to remove that because of some additional texturization work, which made the product even cleaner. It was a huge, huge goal that I had, and we managed to achieve that. So, we're continuing to make the product cleaner and have even better texture than it already does.
Excellent, excellent. Did you guys reach out to any ingredient companies for technical expertise?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that I'm more of a jack of all trades. I'm a generalist, right? That's kind of the life of many entrepreneurs. And I think that where I excel is in bringing a group of experts together that know a whole lot more than I do about their various fields, and really just creating vision and inspiring them to utilize their expertise to create something that doesn't exist. So we absolutely worked with some of the foremost extrusion experts in the world out of Europe and out of the United States, flavor experts. And the big challenge here is it's easy to texturize and flavor something we already know. If you want to use artificial flavors or extracts or all these other ingredients that we don't believe meet our values, it's not very difficult. But if you say, hey, your sandbox is only this big, we got to figure this thing out. It's a much bigger challenge, and I think we actually challenged a lot of technical experts with some of these some of our viewpoints, but we managed to do it and have a great product. So
good, excellent. What would you like to see ingredient companies do better in order to help you as you improve and create new formulations?
the biggest thing is having ingredient companies think about how innovation happens from the soil and from like food. I don't know if you know this, but food grows in the ground for the most part. And so often that component is missing, right? Of like, how can we go from healthy soil to nutritious food and minimally processed ingredients, so that there are more ingredients that we can pull off the shelf as innovators that actually meet our values, right? And so that's an amazing it's an amazing contribution to culture if we can have more ingredients that are going to support the regeneration of the planet and support people's health, and so people can actually make healthy choices and not have to compromise. So that's my ask of ingredient companies.
Okay, I guess you could say every ingredient has its terroir, you know?
Absolutely.
Good way to
Yeah,
look at it. What's in the pipeline for you guys next that you can disclose? What are you
sure.
coming out with next?
Absolutely. We definitely have some stuff in the pipeline. I will say that, we just launched three of these products, three of our SKUs into Sprouts Market nationwide. So it's 380 stores
Wow.
that brought in cheap food. So really grateful for our launch partner there. So we definitely have our hands full, but I am working currently on some products that are both like strips and whole cut plant-based meat. So I'd expect to see some innovation from us in the category of the first really clean whole cut meats.
There's a race going on among all the analog makers to do that. So,
Sure.
and some are coming out with some good stuff. I'll look forward to seeing this because I know one thing: no one's doing it with the Sachinchi nut except you. So that's something to look forward to. Tucker, I want to thank you for this peek inside your really truly impressive approach to driving forward plant-based eating. I also want to thank our audience members for joining us. I invite you to stay tuned for more on-trend topics of interest to food and beverage formulators, and to be sure to check out our growing coverage at preparedfoods.com. Look under the media menu and you'll find all sorts of videos, audio podcasts, webinars, infographics, everything the food product developer needs to jump into the fray with plant-based products and other products. This has been David Fetter and Prepared Foods Media with Tucker Garrison, co-founder of Chief Foods, makers of plant-based pork foods. I look forward to you guys joining us in one of our upcoming episodes, especially with what you have in the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks. Bye.